Good morning, guys, girls. Let's talk about politics. Poly, meaning one, and a tick is a blood sucking animal. And that's kind of what politics is a whole bunch of single blood sucking animals. Um, so I hear Canadians all the time say that they always ask me why I care about American politics or anything like that. Um, well, when Joe Biden makes horrible choices and bad policies, it affects the free market. So that affects your retirement and your pensions and everything in cost of living. Do you think that all Trudeau's fault? I know 80% of it's Trudeau's fault, maybe 40% of it, whatever. But the other 40%, the Canadians have absolutely no power over because it's due to the American government. Because we're essentially under them. They're the superpower of the world. Or you should be, were. So then when Trump comes in, he makes good policies, and your market goes up, and gas goes down, and food goes down, and rent goes down. I don't understand how people don't understand this. Who's the pothead here? How is it that you could possibly think that everything that happens there affects or doesn't affect what happens here? There's always cause and effect. It's why I believe, as Canadians, that's one of many reasons, excuse me, that we'd be better off if we were to be taken over by the USA. See, if the states, they don't have to invade, but just kind of claimed Canada. I guess before I would have been angry about it because I was raised to have national pride and whatnot. But we were told to have pride in our nation, and we were given some example, I guess, like, this war we did that, or here we did this, in history we did that. None of that has to do anything with the country. See, we could have pride in our country because we were free. We could have pride in our country because we were prosperous, right? Like, these were the things to have pride in. People could retire and have a good life and own their home. You can't really do that anymore. None of it. And it's getting worse and worse by the year. So why would we have pride in something like that? Or, well, and pride is one of the most deadly sins known to man, right? So if you're going to have pride in something, have pride in your relationship with God, and have pride in your humbleness. So don't have pride. But the Constitution is getting shit all over. But if it was enacted in Canada, at least Canadians would have a leg to stand on and could protest the same Constitution. Right now, we kind of do, but then there's these little differences, like you're not allowed to defend yourself in Canada. If somebody tries to shoot you, you gotta, even if you have a gun and access to it, and you're not allowed to have access to it, you're not allowed to defend yourself. Like even if you could get to your gun, you're not allowed to even try. You gotta let the guy shoot you while you call the cops. And that's even if, like, what he doesn't want to rob you. He only wants to kill you. Well, that's too bad. You gotta let him. So I think being amalgamated would be the best for everybody. Not only would it give us back a right of free travel, which is one of the 10 planks of Marxism, is to restrict travel, you know, with these 15-minute cities and shit. But even before that, like when I was a kid, you could come to the States with just your ID, your driver's license. Now you need a passport, right? That's retarded. We're basically the same country. We're on the same continent. We have basically the same rules. So why not? Why not just give up on Canada? You could maybe name Ontario Canada instead of Ontario or Ottawa. And keep it prominent as a political city for the northern half of the country. But we don't need all that. And really, we don't need all that politics. Every politician that isn't elected for is a middleman. And actually, every politician is a middleman. They serve very, 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 very little purpose. Or they're supposed to serve very little purpose. But they keep giving themselves more purpose in order to middle out more money. Right? Like, do you understand if like you needed a new road paved, that you'd be better to come together as a community at a town hall, figure out what it's going to cost, like get bids, and then everybody chips in and do it privately, rather than giving the money to some other guy who then pays himself first, finds the highest bidder, and pays him way too much. They do that every time. Anytime one of my friends gets a contract, and I'm in the trades business, so all my friends are contractors, when they get contracts that are government contracts, or when I have, people always say, oh, you're going to coiner, you're going to make so much money, good for you. It's your money. It's you that overpaid. Came out of your paycheck. And he could just as easily pay somebody probably $20,000 less on a $100,000 contract, and probably more like an $80,000 contract. You could probably save 20 grand every time. And I bet it's way more than that. And then all the tax that they need to do it otherwise, that they overpay for the contract and then overpay for all the materials and everything else. So that's like their only responsibility, and they're fucking it right up. The other thing in Canada, their big responsibility is to protect our shorelines and borders, have a military. They fuck that right up too. If it wasn't for the States, we'd already have been taken over. Canada wouldn't stand a fucking chance, other than home turf, and it's hard to fight Canadians because it's fucking cold there. So we'd have that advantage. But I mean, if it was like, say, Russia, they wouldn't have any trouble. It's the same climate. They'd fit right in. So, and it's cold that kills people. Hot wears people out. And it does kill people a bit. But cold is like the bigger killer as far as temperatures go. Most people, when it gets too hot, you just go somewhere that's cooler. Go to the shade, hose yourself down, whatever you got to do to cool down, and avoid heat stroke. Though there are people who die of heat stroke. Anyway, it's sawdust in the back of my fucking throat. It's gross. So the yeah. So it would be in the best interest of Canadians and Americans, for that matter. Not only would the landmass just be huge, and the extra tax revenue be, well, not that much, because there's, California has more people than Canada, but there'd be a good amount of tax there, and a little bit more funding to get that oil, if it's necessary. I don't think it is. There's a company in the 90s who opened up their doors, and they started making turkey guts. So they just go to all the turkey farmers and get all the guts and shit, and then they could process that into oil. I think they said it was 45 minutes or something with heat and pressure. So where's the crisis on the amount of oil? We can make it, because you don't need to just use turkey guts. You could use turkey, pig, chicken, cow, mix it all together. It doesn't matter. It's just going to be oil. That's what oil is. People, dinosaurs, you name it. So, pretty easy to just slow down on the pumping it out of the ground. Start more factories making it. Even though, again, we can burn water just as easy and make clean water. Stan Myers, also in the 90s, later in the 90s, invented a car, and I'm sure most of you have heard about him, that could burn water. And he drove it all around and all that stuff. Well, then after that, with that technology, he perfected it even more. so that you could take any gas, or well, 90% of gas cars in the 90s and earlier. There was one or two where you had to modify the device to get the wires to hook up because the plugs were too deep in or something like that. But I think it was just Toyota. But anyway, at the time, you could take this spark plug device, remove your spark plugs, remove your ground wire, remove the fuel from your tank, drain it right out, and then you put water in the tank. You take your ground wire and hook it to the positive side of your battery, and you take a new ground wire and go to your frame, because the block isn't going to be a ground anymore. It's going to produce energy. So you technically don't need an alternator anymore, but I wouldn't bother taking it off. You always use more power. And I don't know what comes off the block exactly for voltage or anything, but I just know that there is voltage coming off of it and you can't use your ground anymore. The same. Anyway, and then you put these spark plugs in and you just hook them up to your distributor cap. That was important. You can't put, I'm sure you could modify it, but you can't put them on with the coil packs, which was in the early 2000s or late 90s, 2000s throughout there. So that was in retaliation of Stan's device. He was about to make every car in the world burn water. And what he said was God gave it to him in a dream, the idea, and he wanted to remove the American government's independence upon oil, and he was going to give it to them for free. And they wouldn't accept it, and they killed him for it. He was poisoned to death. So with that technology, you could make a huge engine, or a few of them, like massive, and or a bunch of normal ones, which would give you more opportunity to have one break down or one be shut down, getting maintenance while the other ones are still running, right? If you had a bunch. Rig them all up in a warehouse. You know, they don't have to be hooked to cars or anything, because you're only making power. So, and you put power, you could wire all the blocks in sequence and put power on them. Plus, they're running, so there's also your crankshaft spinning and your flywheel. So you hook up to the flywheels, and or even the water pump pulley system, and run generators, making more power, alternators. And so now you've got free energy being made, and the emissions of that energy is clean drinking water for the city. And you'd only have to put a little of probably peroxide or whatever in it to keep it longer in the pipes. But if all the pipes were copper, you wouldn't even need to do that. Put a little salt in it, some minerals, but even that's going to come out of the copper. It's so good for you. Just stay away from plastic. Even if it was cast, like black iron pipe, super good for you as well. Just stay away from plastic. Like this PEX shit in your houses now. Do you know how bad that is for you? All your drinking water is resting in plastic. That's like specially made plastic. And that's all seeping into the water. And then you go and drink it. As opposed to before, all of our water in the pipes was all sitting in copper. Copper's super good for you, and it's super good for your water. Anyhow, so with that technology, our fucking politicians, we could have clean drinking water and free energy, easily. Not to mention we have Tesla coils, and I was watching a video of a guy, he put, I don't know if it was true, I'd like to try it. He tapped out some copper pipes and threaded them, right, tap and die, and then put bolts in them, and then he drove them all into the ground, not very deep either, and the pipes were only maybe 18 inches, and he left them 6 inches out of the ground, so they were a foot in, and then he wired them in series, and hooked it all up to a tester, and then into a car battery, and then he was charging other batteries, all just right out of the ground. And then all those copper nipples that are on the buildings that are from the 1800s, well, that was another form of free energy that they took away from us somehow. That I don't understand. Yeah, I don't really understand that. How they convinced the society to let that go and switch over to coal and nuclear and shit. They've obviously must have propagated something about more energy and this and that. They must have done shortages or something in order to make people not like that energy enough to let them charge for energy. And they might have charged for that and just told people that it was that they had to charge to pay for the units and to up main and maintain and all this other bullshit. And then told them that it was going to be less maintenance and less this and that to burn coal, and it just comes out of the ground and all this shit, right? Easier to get than copper, making all these copper things, which is all bullshit. It's the exact same. So anyhow, America taking over Canada, I think, would be a wonderful thing. And though we don't add a lot of voice, we would add some voice to the repair of our society. Then what we need to do is fire all the politicians, scrap all the laws that have been made since like 1890 or even before, anything that's been made since the founding fathers. Any gun restrictions or any of the travel restrictions or any of that shit that they've come up with through their fear mongering in order to keep us where they want us. Which brings me right into that same thing I was talking about the other day with Russell Brand and all those guys. When you watch that, yeah, you're getting informed, knowing maybe what's going on in the world, but do you? Somebody argued that the other day. I said, you got to turn this stuff off and stop watching it all the time and look around the world. It's a positive place. The world's beautiful. Your life can be beautiful right where you are at. It's just that you've allowed yourself to be programmed to not enjoy it and to be in fear of taking that step. I was there for a long time. And there's always like, well, if I wait 2 months I'll have this, and then once I have that, it'll be easier to make this step or whatever. Those are just excuses, and they're always going to be excuses to not do something. But if you know that you're supposed to do it, let it go. Excuse me. If you're under God and you're walking that path, you don't have to worry about that stuff. All those little things. Well, I could use this, or I could have that, or whatever. Those things will come when you actually need them. And they'll come in the most precise way. Like, say you need an extra $120.22, and you don't have it, but you say, no, I'm gonna have it. I don't have to worry about it. It's gonna be there when I need it. So you set up the whole deal like you had the money, even though you don't, and then even go to the deal, and along the way, something will happen that will give you that exact amount of money, or maybe a couple dollars more. You might have enough to get a bottle of juice or whatever it is that y'all buy. You get an extra cigar. Yeah, I don't know about all this national pride. Especially in a country like Canada, where we're still openly under Britain. We're not a nation of our own. We kind of are. We've proven our independence or whatever by, in World War II, Canada let England go to war first. And it was always Canada that had to go first because we were the colony. But we said, no, we'll go when we decide or whatever. And we let them go, and it was like 2 weeks or something before we went, as a big protest of our independence. That's bullshit. That's just because they can use national pride against you in order to manipulate you. Excuse me. Because Canadians have this pride in Canada and this prejudice towards America, they'll never get the Constitution. They'll never be a part of the real world or whatever. They're always going to be just England's baby. But if you didn't have that sense of pride in your nation, like I said, keep pride in God and your relationship with God. That's something you can be prideful about. Other than that, don't have pride. And I know sometimes it's probably okay. Like if you do a job well done, you can look back and say, wow, I did a job well done. But don't be boastful and bragging about it and all that stuff. It's just a job. Whatever. There's thousands of people who can do the same job, and probably thousands of people who could do a better job. So, whatever. But it's fine to, feel a sense of accomplishment about something. But we should avoid too much pride. Yuck. Gross. And then, if we were to let go of the false premise of Canada and become, like I said, 12, 13, 14 new, or I think it's 15 new states, because we got 12 provinces and 2 territories or something like that, or 3 territories because we got Univit now. So that is just a bunch of new states. And then all those borders are wide open. Maybe we could leave Quebec as Canada, just all by themselves. And then we'll invade them physically. I'm just joking. And then the other things, the natives. I don't know too much about them in America, but I know in Canada, see, we have Canadian rights, Quebec rights, and the native rights. And they're all different. And as you go up the chain, you get more rights. And you can do all this other stuff. Now, okay, if you want to have native rights, I don't have a big issue with that. You want to go and make a reserve and live on it? Stay the fuck on your reserve. Don't come off of it hunting any animals in the rest of fucking Canada. And don't be expecting that you get housing and fucking solar panels on your roof and fucking all this other shit, tax-free products that are Canadian products. Like, okay, maybe you can go and hunt anywhere in the country, but you cannot, you can go and migrate with the herd, follow it around, live in your fucking teepee. But don't be buying fucking nylon tents, because that's not your culture. If you want to fucking live your culture in a third world country, you could go back to Israel, claim your birthright, and then do whatever the fuck you want. But see, here's the way it went, was you guys came here first, settled, and then the way it worked in history was that if you couldn't defend yourself, people would come and take your shit. It's just how it was. So they came over here and they had the oceans rise up when the Grand Canyon let go and other places, and protected them and sealed them over here. So they thought, oh, well, God's protecting us or whatever. We don't need to advance military-wise. And chances are they only came here with what they could carry. You wear tools out, things get worn and whatever, and then you got to